The second COVID wave is subsiding with incremental cases steadily falling day after day, now well below 1 lakh cases. So the question we are asking today is, will the Indian economy see at least the same kind of recovery in the second quarter that it saw last year after the first COVID wave? Let's first look at the GDP data. We normally look at the GVA year on year. But if you looked at the Q2 GVA growth over Q1, it was a good 18% higher in real terms. I'm not taking current. If you looked at Q3 again, over Q2, it was a good 10.1% growth GVA in real terms. And then, of course, we go to Q4. So the question we are asking is, can we come anywhere close to this 18% quarter-on-quarter growth? Let's look at more specifics, maybe two-wheeler sales. Look at the way they drop in April and May, obviously because these were lockdown months in 2020. And then we see them surging far above the pre-COVID levels as we come to September, October, and the strength kind of remains up until Jan-Feb. Let's look at passenger cars. Likewise, you see them, of course, drop to zero in the lockdown months of March, April. And then you see the rise in September, October, going all the way up to the next Jan, much better than the pre-COVID levels of January 2020. So the question we are asking now is, can we repeat anything like that in the current year? And I have with me three economists who represent kind of different strains. I have the economist from a bank, Samiran Chakraborty of Citi, and an economist representing an industrial house, Dhiraj Nayyar of Vedanta Group, and Mr. Anantha Nageswaran, a professional economist, and the nearest I could get someone who is working with the government is a member of the PMEAC. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Samiran, you get the first chance to present the case. Last year, like I pointed out, GVA, second quarter, a good 18.2% higher than Q1. This year, Q1 will not be so bad because, the base is better. We have not had such a strict lockdown. But nevertheless, your first estimates of how good July, August, September will be.
So, Latha, before we look into the future, let's pause for a second and look back. What I would say is that even in Q4 of fiscal year 21, we started seeing that the momentum of that pent-up demand was waning. And particularly if you look at the consumption side of the economy, the momentum significantly declined in that quarter. And then the second wave came and hit us. Now, the characterization of the second wave in one line is that in terms of its severity, in an economic sense, was much lower than the severity of the first wave. So the part of the V that we are talking of, the downward sloping part, that is going to be much shallower this time than what we had witnessed in the first wave. The question is about now the upward part of the V. There, our view is that part of the increase is just simply mechanical. The moment you open up the economy springs back. The question is, once you get up to say about 90-95% of the pre-second COVID wave levels of activity, do we see the same pace continuing or not? And there our view is that because of certain elements which are distinguishing factors of the second wave, we might not see the pace to become as much as we saw in the first wave. In particular, the few pointers I want to put on the table, one is that the consuming class that has been impacted more in this second wave. The forced savings in the first wave was for almost 6 months. This time it has been only for a couple of months. The precautionary savings could be higher. The medical expenditure has been higher, which could be a dampener as well. So, and the saturation of demand to adjust to the new normal has already happened in the first wave and might not be repeated as much in the second wave. So because of all these issues, we believe that maybe the pace will moderate a bit, but I must add one last line that sentiment plays a massive role. Today, RBI Consumer Confidence Survey shows that the post-second wave consumer confidence is at worse level than the first wave. But if this improves fast because of vaccination, then we might see our forecast to be wrong and a much faster recovery as well.
Okay. No, I take your point. Vaccination is going to be something that all of you will throw at me. And that is going to be an uncertain factor. It could improve confidence if it happens faster. Anantha, what's your best sense? Last year, rural demand was a big savior for us. What's the expectation now? Because data is very clear that this time, tier 3, tier 4 cities and rural areas have been impacted by COVID.
So thank you, Latha. I think I have to clarify that even though you said I'm the closest you could get to somebody who's working with the government, I must say that I'm speaking entirely in my personal capacity here, not representing any views of the EAC or the government of India.
Sure.
So yeah, you are right about the fact that last year the rural India wasn't that badly affected. This year, although we have a good monsoon prediction, and it has set in. The spread of the virus in rural India is the sort of an unknown factor. But compensating that is the fact that bulk of the economic activity, whether it is in manufacturing or logistics or some services, not necessarily contact-based, they have remained largely untouched. So I think we have to consider the unknown unknowns, because if you go back and look at the kind of expectation we had for 2020-21, when the first wave was unfolding, it was actually a lot pessimistic than it eventually turned out to be. That is one factor to keep in mind. And second, I think the business sector has indeed come through looking a little better at the end of the financial year March 21, based on cost cutting in the first half, followed by a revenue growth in the second half, etc. So my sense is that we need to avoid both extreme pessimism and also overconfidence that we would exactly match the kind of rebound in demand that we got. But at the same time, we don't need to go very pessimistic. So I think the current expectations that the RBI has for something like a 9.5% real GDP growth seems realistic to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if we even managed to come within a whisker of the double-digit growth rate.
Okay. Fine. I'll come to you all with more finer points in a bit. But yes, I take your point that we perhaps were extra pessimistic after the first wave. But there could be an extra pessimism now simply because after the first wave, we never thought there will be such a ferocious second wave. In fact, I don't even remember thinking about a second wave. We went to several resorts, of course, in and around Maharashtra. Maybe I didn't take a flight, but much more confident of going out. Right now, I'm not very sure whether the population will be that, even if it can afford. Now, Dhiraj, I want to get a different angle from you. See, before I started off with the two-wheeler data and the motor car data. Both those showed exceptional consumption in the August, September, October period. As a person working with a group where you would want to know how metal consumption is or how consumer durables would get consumed, what are your best estimates back home?
So, I mean, it's very difficult to say and give anything, concrete, because this time around, as you just said, in many ways, the uncertainty and fear are much higher than they were last time. So last time, what we saw was basically the fallout of lockdown, much more than the fallout of the public health part of it, because, in the end, it was a fairly manageable scenario overall. I mean, we didn't have any hospitals overflowing. We didn't have any, huge health expenditures. So I think in many ways, the first wave, it was really just about that strict lockdown and coming out of that strict lockdown. This time, it isn't about coming out of the lockdown. This time, it's more psychological in terms of, you've been through something very ferocious. It was not there the first time. There are already, people, experts saying the next wave could, possibly hit children, younger people. So there's already a lot of talk about the third wave, which is partly a compensation by experts for not warning enough about the second wave. So, I mean, we don't really know whether it will affect children, whether it will be as bad as this one. We don't know. But that uncertainty factor is extremely high, which is why I suspect that this time around, people are likely to be more conservative, in their consumption and in their discretionary consumption in particular, even as, these mini lockdowns or state-wise lockdowns open up, because the uncertainty and fear of the known this time. Last time it was more unknown. This time, the ferocity of the virus is known, and I don't see the vaccinations, scaling up anytime soon. So I think that factor at best will help in the last quarter of this financial year, not before that, because I don't think sufficient numbers are going to be vaccinated before November or December. So I don't see that, really building that kind of confidence by, say, the festive season. So I would be a little warier of predicting a strong comeback this year. And the rural part of India, agriculture may do all right. But again, there's been this health devastation in rural India this time, which was not there last time at all. So again, the confidence and psychology there as well is also affected. So I think that is what is really different. And that is why I think people may hold on to their money rather than spend it out until they are certain that this COVID thing is behind us altogether. So that said, I mean, I'm not overly pessimistic either. I don't foresee some kind of disaster scenario or a big crash or anything. But I think the earlier estimates of, say, 12-13% double-digit growth are unlikely to happen given the uncertainty. So we may have to settle for 8 or 9.
I agree.
But so
all of you, I think, are agreeing on that. Maybe 9, 9.5. But that's not helping much. I want actually more nuances now rather than numbers, because I guess this 9.5 is a number out there, and everybody is 1 percentage point this way, that way. It's not very different. But I know I want to just get
be sure of that, because if there is a third wave which is like this one, then all bets are off.
No, all bets are off. I'm not denying that at all. But clearly, the human. Last time when in February we fell down to 8,000 cases, and then in March it came to 10, 15, 20, we still didn't get the realization. Whereas now, if you look at Maharashtra's grid, very clearly any opening up of economic activity is related to positivity rate. And I guess all states will be following something like that. So we will be more dynamic in our behavior now. It's a little difficult to foresee, but I want to discuss two separate factors which may be a differentiator this time. One is exports, and exports have done brilliantly well in the months of April and May, in spite of domestic imports doing badly. So clearly the domestic economy was not absorbing, but we were able to export a lot. Your thought on that, Dhiraj, very quickly. As a group, could you all experience that?
You have actually hit the nail on the head, because I think again the traditional view in India has always been that consumption and investment are what drive growth, which is true because they are the biggest components. But exports, in last 4 or 5 years, export performance has not been good. But that is the real window that we have, because certainly in China there's very, very strong, and I can tell you from the point of view of metals, certainly, and metals huge demand revival in China. And in other parts of the world as well, picking up, because vaccination is going much faster in the US and other parts of the world. So I think exports is the big opportunity for Indian companies. Instead of just Atmanirbhar Bharat, we have to move to make in India for the world. That I think is has to be the philosophy for a lot of firms, at least in manufacturing.
All right.
Exports is going to be a key opportunity we should not miss, and that will in fact be the driver of jobs and growth. So I think, ironically enough, after 5 or 6 years of stagnation in exports, I think that is the sector which is going to give the fillip to the economy and which will boost consumption and investment rather than the other way around.
An Atmanirbhar Plus is what we want. Well,
Yeah, so I
actually,
think-
I'm being told I have to take a mandatory break. I'm coming back and posing similar and other questions to all of you. Coming back in a minute.